Alrighty, welcome back to episode 3 of Tales from Q's Juke Joint, where I talk to fellow musicians, fellow music lovers, DJs, etc. And basically, we just pretty much pay tribute to the one and only Quincy Jones, who has recently passed. And although a lot of us are still mourning, so I felt like this podcast would be a great idea for us to come together and share our respects for the one and only Quincy Jones. And I am excited for my next guest today. He is a DJ extraordinaire, a tradesman at heart, and a fucking hell of a dude. Let me tell you guys that. I don't know what else to say, but I feel like this man didn't even need an introduction anyways. This is Scotty, aka DJ Boomerang. Give it up.
Is Vin?
How do I address you exactly?
What? Sorry, mate. Yeah, Scotty's fine, or Boomerang.
Boomerang. Okay, he's a man that is of many names. All right, my friend. How are you doing today?
Good, mate. Good, very good.
All right, good, good. So, the reason why I had you today is because you are a man who has a really great ear. I will say that. And I know for you, like you love all types of music. Your music taste is pretty much as mine, where it's like you're everywhere.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure for you, Quincy Jones is a huge influence in your musical development, right?
Yes, yes. At a younger age, so I was a kid in the '80s, so I'm showing my age. But Michael Jackson was the first introduction that I got of Quincy Jones's production.
Mm,
What more can you say? Like this album here,
yes.
Quincy's touch all over it. So yeah, from that, and then once I got older and I started collecting my own records, I've just gone into the world of the Q and found all these other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, and like that's I feel like everybody's basic introduction of Quincy Jones was through the Off the Wall album. Like
Yep.
even my parents, like my dad was in Fiji before he came to Canada, and one of his first recollections of like being a teen back in that time frame in Fiji was dancing out to Off the Wall in the
Yep.
clubs and getting himself ready to go and have the time of his life in Fiji.
Yeah, even The Wiz, the movie was big as a kid. I was too young to understand Quincy Jones's involvement in it all, but the older I got, the more you got into it, and you find out that this guy is a genius.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like a lot of people weren't even aware of like the amount of records that this guy's done.
Yes, yeah,
You know what I mean? And like when you look at his discography, if you reflect on it, then it's like there's every single genre has at least a Quincy touch with it, whether he's involved in it or not.
yeah, just arrangements and stuff like that. Just his involvement sort of set up the way that you look at producers now, like Dr. Dre and stuff like that. They just arrange, they get the right people in the room to create something pretty special. So
Exactly. And let me ask you this because you were saying like there's been a lot of different producers that have taken notes from Quincy. Have
yeah,
you would you say there's like some producers now that like you would see them having like a little bit of Quincy in them when they do their work?
oh, 100%. I think he's basically the first person that started that influence, like arrangements and getting certain studio musicians in to create sounds. Like Dr. Dre is just a carbon copy, I think, of what
Yeah,
Quincy Jones used to do.
yeah. No, I totally get that actually. Like if you look back at like his productions, like Dr. Dre was very much a perfectionist like Quincy where like he
Yep.
wanted to make sure the record sounded the way that he wanted it to be. You know what I mean? So I totally see that. And, like I was saying this, I did an interview with Hip Hop Gods earlier. I
Yep.
was like, for hip hop and Quincy, like those two things are coming together as well. Like you can't see hip hop without Quincy, and you can't see kind of see Quincy without hip hop.
Pretty good for a trumpet player.
No, exactly, right? Like the fact that like, so many people have sampled his work and like,
Oh, yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of people in hip hop still go out to him and still say, hey, you want to do this record with me? Like I didn't even know this actually like until I watched the video, but the video for Triumph Wu Tang.
Yeah.
He's in that
Yeah.
video.
Isn't that? Yeah, he's at the end.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and I've watched the video so many times, but I it's when it throws onto his section, and I'm like, that's Quincy Jones.
Yeah, yeah. When Ray and Ghost are in the cage, I think he's sitting at the bar or something.
Yeah, like I didn't clue in that like Quincy Jones would be sitting there bopping out to Wu Tang in a
Yeah,
video. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like that's some incredible shit, if you ask me.
I mean, even Isaac Hayes had a lot of respect for RZA as well. Those
Yeah,
type of people could see that kept their music alive with the sampling and creating a new genre and a new audience for cool music. So
exactly. Yeah, like it brought like a huge new audience to Quincy, right? Like that exposed
yeah,
him a lot more, and
yeah,
especially when that time like Wu Tang itself was already a big movement. You know what I mean? Like the second album in, they're already bigger than ever.
yeah,
Right? So like you already have that many listeners getting exposed to Quincy Jones like that. It's like holy shit! Like you actually know what you're doing,
yes,
right?
yeah.
um, but let me ask you though. So like going back to like your younger days, like besides like Michael Jackson, because I've known you too well now. Your music taste is like all over
Yeah.
the place. And it's like very eclectic. Would you say like there's any other artists that Quincy Jones had an involvement in that you listened to growing up?
So yeah, Michael Jackson was early as before I was a teenager, and then once I started collecting my own records, I went down the funk
Mm-hmm.
like road, went to James Brown, P Funk Parliament, and then I pretty much found these guys.
Ooh, yes, that is
And
yes.
yeah, so the brothers Johnson, these guys here, like this is
Oh,
Quincy all over.
no, literally,
There's a little song on this, Strawberry Letter 23. Everybody knows that one. It's a
yes,
classic.
yes, that is a very classic record, and it's funny because Tevin Campbell sang that later covered that song.
Yes.
Man is pulling out the 45s too.
Yeah. And Tarantino used it in Jackie Brown. There's a famous scene with that song in it.
Okay,
With Samuel L. Jackson takes Chris Tucker in the boot around to
see,
the parking lot.
I did not know that. Like it was
Yeah, have a watch, and they're playing that song. So it's a great song.
see, and I was just saying this to somebody too, where like Quincy's influences not only range from like music, but it's also in film and television too. Like Jackie Brown, I did not know that like Quincy Jones track was on Jackie Brown. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I did not even clue that in, and I've watched that movie a couple times already, and I'm surprised like I didn't even clue that in.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like the fact that he's been able to kind of be that versatile and be able to go into film too, like that's such a huge thing, right? Because not a lot of producers can go outside of that spectrum.
Yep.
And like, like even like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like that's a classic example too, because a lot of people grew up with that. And I'm pretty sure you grew up with that when that
Yeah.
first aired on
Yep.
television, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so a lot of
Back
people
when Will Smith wasn't as annoying as he is now, I suppose.
shit. Let- did you want to get him over here so you can slap the piss out of him?
Slap him, mate.
See, I already knew you wasn't gonna play today, bro. I already knew you were gonna play around. But no, like Quincy had his like he put that place for Will Smith. He said, like
Yeah.
this is a show that I want to do, and I want to put you in it, and that pretty much catapulted the career of Will Smith if you think about it. Like if like I would honestly say if it wasn't for Fresh Prince and if it wasn't for Quincy, then maybe Will Smith wouldn't have just blown up the way that he did,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
right? And a lot of people kind of forget that too, where it's like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was a Quincy Jones project. It wasn't just a Will Smith project. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot,
Apparently, he had a different song written before Will and DJ Jazzy Jeff wrote the song that we all know.
yeah,
And yeah, so I think Will Smith took it over to Jazzy Jeff. They wrote the song and then they played it to Quincy, and Quincy was like, "Your song's way better than my heap of shit that I made." So
yeah.
the song you hear is the one that they all wanted. So yeah,
Well,
catchy track.
see, like I didn't even know that. See, this guy, I already knew that this guy would be much more wiser than I would be. I had to use the keyword wiser on that.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
um, but yeah, so like you were saying like the Brothers Johnson, like that's a huge influence. A lot of people referenced that record when Quincy had passed. Like a lot of people when they were posting their tributes to Quincy, like I would see those two records everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, would you say you have a favorite track out of the any of the Brothers Johnson's discography?
Oh, look, you've definitely that one. And then this one here's got a good sample on it that OC used, I think, sample on one of the albums.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
no, you can just hear Quincy's production all through it.
yeah, exactly. And you know what? The Brothers Johnson is a classic example too. A lot of people haven't really, like, people on social media have referenced those records a lot, but a lot of people on YouTube really haven't mentioned the Brothers Johnson at all. So that's a very good pick, honestly. And like, even if like we were to talk about like his solo stuff, like there's so many classic records that this dude already had in the '80s.
Oh, even before that, like
Even before, yeah, sorry.
even yeah, so that like the late '70s.
Ooh, yes, yes, that is my favorite right there. Oh,
Yeah,
the mob
Quincy's got a
sample of
famous
that.
sample on that as well. So, but my favourite solo from Quincy's is this. The
Yes.
dude, the dude. So 1981, this came out, and that track has got sort of like a rap feel to it. And you think where hip hop was in 1981, it wasn't really evolving. It was evolving, but it wasn't as big as what it become. So he was sort of breaking down early hip hop with his production sort of stuff as well. So
Exactly, and especially for someone that was like classically trained in music, because when you look at his stuff before, you would see like he worked with Frank Sinatra, and then
yeah,
and he's coming out with a different sound that's a bit more in tune to the popular culture, which is hip hop at the time, and especially if it's a new genre, then it's like he's basically pioneering, not pioneering, but he's part of that stepping stone to it becoming something bigger.
well, you've got session musicians on this that range from Herbie Hancock. Stevie Wonder, I think, plays on one of the tracks.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's this album is in between Off the Wall and Thriller. So when you think about that, you can hear that same type of vibe in production as the Michael Jackson stuff.
yeah. Definitely. I would say like the dude is probably one of like Quincy's like most well-known projects, I would say.
Yeah, and just that song alone, it's amazing.
Exactly, right? And
Songs
think
play really loud.
yeah, like with that one I would say a lot of hip hop heads have paid a lot of respect to that record. And it's good to see that because there's been like you said before, there's so much hip hop already on that record already that it's already been respected heavily,
Yeah.
right? So,
MF Doom sampled it too, I think. One of the tracks off that.
yeah, and I saw you had it there earlier, but Body Heat is another classic
Yes,
record of that as well.
this one here.
Oh, listen, Everything Must Change is probably one of my favorite songs ever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I love that song. Like I just think everything about that song is incredible. Just even the reprise of that record is just incredible. And just the way that he went with that record too, it's like so it's funk and soul, but it's very experimental, which is what
Yeah.
I really like about it. Like that's what made me fall in love with Quincy was the fact that he's not confined to a certain type of sound or a certain type of genre. He's like, okay, like let me make it this, but then I want you to do this to it.
Yeah, yeah. Tweak it and whatever sounds, whatever he hears, he changes and makes it what it
Like,
is.
like I remember I was showing my friend the Mob Deep sample. I was like, oh, like this actually came from a Quincy Jones record,
Yeah,
and I played it for him, and he was like, that's actually insane that like that one part is taken, like that was used in Shook Ones is on a
yeah.
record like that. You know what I mean? Like you would never think of it. And even if you
Uh,
listen to the track from before, like the beginning, it doesn't even sound like the sample does,
no, no.
right? It's like a totally different song.
Yeah, even the Tupac sample that they basically took off this as well. They chopped it. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, that one's for How Do You Want It, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that one's another good chop up right there. So yeah, but like exactly, like Quincy Jones has put a stamp on all of those records, and like you can tell as soon as you hear it. Like even if you heard How Do You Want It, you can easily just kind of sense like there's a Quincy Jones stamp on top of
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of hard to avoid those type of records. But next question I had to ask was we've already kind of touched upon it earlier, but because I know like you're a massive film person as well and
Yep.
a bit of a horror geek, um, would you say that like besides Jackie Brown, was there any other films that like you saw like Quincy's little touch on that like you were like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that?
Well, yeah. So obviously, The Wiz, like
Yes.
that was a amazing movie. That was great growing up. I remember that. But then he had other things behind the scenes with The Color Purple and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, that I would say like those are like the on top like those are the credits that like people have barely talked about and like even The Wiz. I love The Wiz.
Yeah.
Like you have such a great cast. You have Diana Ross as Dorothy, you have Michael Jackson as the Scarecrow, and then you know you have Quincy Jones behind the whole entire composition of the musical. And you know like a lot of people find it hard to watch musicals too because of the arrangements of it, the duration.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a massive fan of musicals, but I do like that film. That's really good.
Exactly, and a lot of people like The Wiz too, right? Like you can even like I'm pretty sure even if you haven't seen The Wiz, you can easily remember one song from there.
Yeah,
Like it's just that big of a cultural phenomenon. Like that's
yeah,
how big it was. Like even the new like they made a new one a couple years ago, but like people still talk about the original
yeah,
1979
yeah,
one,
yeah.
right? I think it was 79, right? Or
Yeah,
78?
it was around, and then after that, that's when he started working with Michael Jackson for Off the Wall. So
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was 78 or 79. I reckon it was definitely around then.
Yeah, but that was pretty much like the birth of like the whole Quincy and Michael
Yep,
production type thing,
yep,
right?
yep.
Yeah, no. So honestly, The Wiz is like another good like a lot of people if you haven't watched it, like I would go and watch it right now. Like I would stop what you're doing and watch it
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
because it's that good of a movie. Like I've seen it 1,000 times and the soundtrack is incredible. A lot of if you're a record collector too, I would suggest you have the soundtrack on vinyl
yeah.
because a lot of people like that's a collection thing number one. You have to have the album. If you don't, then go get it. Go get it. Go buy it on Discogs. Go buy it on CD. Download it. Whatever the fuck. Go do it.
Yeah, just
It's
get it.
right. Like trust me. Like Ease on Down the Road. Like that song is in my head 24/7, three six
Yeah,
five.
yeah.
That You Can't Win is another good song too. Like there's so many great songs on that soundtrack. But yeah, no. So a lot of different things that Quincy has done. Was there anything that like so like as we head into like the 90s, so like we're going off from 80s Scotty to 90s Scotty, you know, he's going on the skateboard, he's causing up a bunch of ruckus everywhere, you know, man's is blasting his Beastie Boys everywhere. What was Scotty in the 90s listening to in terms of like Quincy Jones stuff?
Look, probably a lot of his older stuff still, because in the 90s I was listening to a lot of hip hop,
Mhm.
obviously, and I was lucky enough to my era. I grew up with it, with
Yeah.
all your classic, golden hip hop now, boom
Mhm.
bap and all that sort of stuff. So I think he did a collaboration with Ice-T in the early 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, he did actually. I was saying this to Hip Hop Gods on the last episode that I did with him. We were talking about that collaboration and
Yep,
how like that collaboration is just excellent and like you know, like we had like Tevin Campbell come out too during that time, and Tevin Campbell was responsible from Quincy Jones. You know, he
yep,
gave him Strawberry Letter to cover, and then that became a big hit for
yeah,
him,
but, yep,
right? So pretty much Quincy was just everywhere still. Like he was still doing TV, he was still doing fashion, he was still doing all this other stuff too, right? So
yeah. Well, I suppose that was the Fresh Prince, that era too, wasn't it?
yeah,
In the 90s.
yeah, I think it ended 95 or 96.
Yeah,
Yeah, I want to say around those somewhere. I'm horrible with dates. I wish I can remember dates properly. But it's around those like I would around like around 95 I would say. But yeah,
yeah,
and then pretty much he just kind of stayed kind of chilling for a little bit, right? If you think about it, there was not much that was really going on with Quincy during the 90s at that point.
yeah. I
Like
mean, he's already certified himself as a genius. I mean, so
yeah, I think at
like,
that point he was just kind of like basking in all of like the achievements that he had been doing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Especially if you're working since like the 50s or the 60s and you're at that point of like, okay, I can take a step back and appreciate everything again.
yeah,
And you know, like he always kept himself busy too, so it wasn't like he was doing music, like he was always like writing books or doing lectures or
yeah.
just he always kept himself busy somehow. So that's something that I respected for Quincy as well.
I mean, right up until he passed, he was still involved in things, and similar to Herbie Hancock. I mean, he's I think 84.
Yeah.
He toured in Melbourne here like a month ago. He was still touring
Wow. What did
at
you get
that age. It's
him at
pretty
all?
phenomenal. And people like a really close friend of mine, Gregor. Shout out to Gregor. He went and said it was amazing. So
Wow. See, that's another concert I would have loved to go to. I feel like watching people like that, especially on stage, like it's just such a different energy from watching like a singer or a rapper perform because that's just more so like you're watching the musical processes in action technically,
yeah,
right? So I that would be a dope concert to go to, honestly. And I've heard that he's really incredible live, so I feel like I should definitely check it out.
yeah. If you get a chance,
Yeah.
I seen him about 10 years ago, and it was phenomenal. But yeah, but my mate just said it. He still had it. It was great.
Wow. Well, definitely I'm gonna have to take a look for next time then.
Yep.
Alrighty, well, I think you've answered a lot of questions for me, but was there anything that you wanted to add in terms of like any Quincy Timbits or anything that's like a personal memory for you at all, or like anything you
Well,
add?
we can't. We've got to show this. I mean,
Oh,
that's it. This is it.
yeah. Oh, I'm already like drooling on the inside looking at that.
I mean, I think all the songs on this they all charted.
No, they all did, yeah.
Yeah.
All the singles,
Yeah.
like that's a big thing for an album at that point. You know what I mean? Like every single song was and especially for Michael to do that, like that was usually his type of thing, where like every single song off the album would be a single, if not maybe one song would be missed.
Yeah.
For Thriller, every single song was released on a 7-inch or 12-inch,
Yes.
right? So like even Thriller had its own dance mix,
I did. Yeah.
right? So like that said a lot too for how big the album and its production was. And a lot of people, actually DJs too, like they use Billie Jean as like their beat juggling techniques too. So you
Yeah.
know,
I've got doubles of that Billie Jean for that reason.
oh, see, look what he's doing. He's already showing off how good he is on the turntables with his doubles.
I try. I try.
No, but trust me, like again, like that's like personal DJ stuff right there, right? Like Billie Jean is like that record that every single hip hop DJ uses to practice with.
I just the intro. As soon as you hear the drums, I mean, it's on, isn't it?
Exactly, and you know what? Every single person has sampled those drums somehow.
Yeah.
Like it's appeared on random records like here and there if like people pay attention to it weird enough. Like I don't know if you remember S Club 7.
Yep.
One of their songs samples Billie Jean. I think it's the song Alive. Like if you listen to the intro of it, they use like the same drum beat.
Yeah. So does Pharrell sampled it for Old Dirty Bastard as well.
Yeah, and Britney used it too for Boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
I think
yeah,
Get Money, Old Dirty Bastard. It's got the same drums.
yeah, yeah. So a lot of people use that. Like that drum break is like probably the famous one of the famous drum breaks of the '80s, I would say.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of people still use it. A lot of people still sample it.
Yeah.
Like
I'm assuming it's an 808. It sounds like an 808.
exactly, yeah. No, but like that, it's probably one of the best beats ever if you think about it. It's a beat that everybody recognizes. It's a beat that gets everybody moving, and everybody just knows the song right off the bat.
And then he performed it live and decided to do the moonwalk. I mean, you know.
Yes, that is a huge, like that was a huge thing to watch that on Motown 25. Like I remember watching it like on YouTube like when I was very younger, like for the first time, and I was like, whoa, nobody could ever do that. Especially
James
to
Brown. James Brown.
well, obviously you put James Brown and MJ together. That's obviously competition right there. But
I
like
think Michael Jackson had his own style, but they were influenced. Like he was influenced by James Brown.
oh yeah,
100%.
yeah. It kind of goes back to like when Michael honored James Brown at like the BET Awards, and he was just like, "I love this man, I love this man, I love this man," and I'm just like, like that's something huge for him,
Yep.
and especially because Michael doesn't go out that often either, and he doesn't really present stuff to anybody. So the fact that like he was there for James Brown and like not anybody else, like that says a lot too,
Oh yeah. Yep.
right? So like that's just the influence of Michael, honestly. But yeah, no. So thank you again, DJ
No
Boomer,
worries.
the interview, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, and you really are truly a musical genius.
Oh, cheers, mate. Thank
No,
you.
trust me. And a lot of people watching follow DJ Boomerang on Instagram. One of the
Yep.
best dudes to ever do it on the ones and twos, and one of Australia's finest exports. See, I had to catch him off guard with that.
Yeah.
Okay, but no, seriously, bro, thank you so much for doing this. I really
No
appreciate
worries, Vin. Thank you, mate.
Yes, but thank you to everyone watching, and hopefully you guys will be in tune for next week's episode. And for now, just take care and stay blessed.